but I'm not going to be able to get to everything. But one of the things I'm tired of is the ridiculously condescending attitudes that people have towards African Americans, especially when it comes to our relationship with the Democratic Party, when it comes to Democrats. African Americans are not stupid. And I say this because a number of people, mostly white, have come up to my job and in my life and have said, Democrats don't care about African Americans. They don't care about us. Yeah, we know that. Okay, well, if African Americans know that, why do African Americans tend to vote Democrat? Why do they tend to vote Democrat and not Republican? I'll give you an example. Someone came up to me and said, African Americans were duped by Black Lives Matter in order to vote for Biden. First of all, that doesn't match up because Black Lives Matter is just a phrase. The fears and the concerns and legitimate arguments of Black Lives Matter, which include redlining, police brutality, for-profit prisons, qualified immunity, what's the other one? Citizens arrest, the war on drugs. All of these things were well-known evils that were done against the African American community. That was the reason that Obama won his presidency when he first ran. Those fears and concerns were always with African Americans, and we were always talking and protesting about them. That's the reason that Black Americans voted for Obama, believing that he was going to solve these issues. They just weren't labeled under the umbrella term Black Lives Matter or Say Her Name. That's it. But those issues have always been a part of the African American consciousness. They always have been. They're not new. So that right off the bat doesn't make sense. And the second reason is Black folks didn't vote in Biden because they believed that Biden was going to follow through on the concerns of African American people, of the concerns that have been labeled Black Lives Matter and Say Her Name, but again have existed long before those terms existed. They didn't vote for him for that. They voted for him because he wasn't Trump. I would rather be thrown in a ditch than be thrown in a pus, garbage-filled, boo-boo-filled, open sewer. Throw me in the ditch, don't throw me in the pus, poop-filled, acid sewer. That's why Trump is that bad. And that is often all that it comes down to. African Americans don't vote, or when African Americans do vote, they vote for the Democratic Party just because they do not want Republicans in. Not because they have any faith that Democrats are going to do anything good. And here's the funny thing about it. This is how out of touch that conservatives and Republicans are. They have this ideology in their head that Democrats are liberal or progressive. No, they're not. You know who's like progressive? Like the people marching on the floor. I don't agree with everything that AOC says or does, but I do agree with some of the things that she has said and done. And other Bernie Sanders, even that Asian man who was running for president. Even Bernie Sanders and that guy, they were taking some of their economic ideas and a lot of their economic ideas from Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, who these same conservatives don't talk to you about the fact that those two men greatly criticized capitalism. They greatly criticized the hell out of it. Socialism, combination economies like socialist capitalism, et cetera, et cetera. What was I saying? All that stuff. That's why they tend to Democrats are not progressive. They're not liberal. That's why there's that term, establishment Democrat. They keep the status quo in check, which the status quo is already institutionally racist and misogynistic. It's already anti-Black woman, anti-Black people, anti-Native woman, anti-Native people. It's already that. But people of color tend to vote Democrat because conservatives and Republicans freak them out that much. But then the next answer is why? Well, what about Lincoln? Lincoln didn't care about African Americans. He did not originally even want to free us from race-based anti-African bondage here in the country. He didn't originally want to do that, but he was pressured by people like Frederick Douglass and other previously enslaved and currently and during his time currently enslaved, racially enslaved African American people. He was pressured on top of the needing more bodies for the Civil War, literally needing more Black soldiers, which there were Black women who disguised themselves as men to join the Civil War. There are brothers who knew, but she's a warrior. She's going to go fight. Interesting history. Look it up. But he was pressured, and when he finally signed when he finally signed the Emancipation, that took a long time for that to take into effect. A long time. You had generations of African Americans and people who died in bondage while waiting to be freed after that document had been signed. There's a whole history of it, but he was not the sole or arguably even the biggest reason as to why black people were freed. African Americans were the biggest reason why we were freed. And putting the pressure on the country, fighting in the Civil War, and putting pressure on the Republican Lincoln. But Republican still meant something very different than what it means now. We live in the racism and misogyny that is rampant within conservatism, that is rampant within right-wingism, that's rampant within the Republican Party is not new, which is very much this very familiar European, Christian, anti-African, anti-woman rhetoric. I mean, Republicans talk like European colonizers with their Christian extremism, hatred of women, hatred of women's autonomy, hatred of African descent people, and refusal of acknowledging their history. They talk like colonizers. They talk like OG European colonizers. But that's not new because of the fact that, again, even Lincoln-era Republicans were not all that non-racist from Democrats. They were a better option, but many of them wanted us to be forcibly sent back to Africa or some other crazy crap. So besides all of that, Republicans, what's its name? Sorry, I keep forgetting. Lincoln-era Republicans were still anti-African, were still anti-woman, were still didn't want women to vote and all this other crazy nonsense. They were just better than Democrats. So they were still very racist and misogynistic. But we don't live, and we have not lived in for an extremely long amount of time, Lincoln-esque Republicans. We have been under Richard Nixon Republicans. One of the reasons that African Americans despise Republicans is the fact that, again, all that stuff I talked about, it's not new with Trump. Trump did not bring all of that stuff I mentioned, this Eurocentric misogyny and anti-Africanness and anti-blackness and racism and all this. He did not bring that into the Republican fold. That had already been in the Republican Party for a long time. As far back as Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, Lee Atwater. Look up Lee Atwater and what Lee Atwater said about the Lee Atwater strategy. That's what I call it. But look up the Lee Atwater quote containing the N-word. And I mean, listen to that quote because it's identical to today. I used to always say that Trump is just a mentally retarded version of Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan was the devil. Again, Republicans nor Democrats were never this romanticized thing. African Americans voting for either Republicans or Democrats was always choosing the lesser evil. Both were lose-lose. Both had anti-African and anti-women sentiments. But this white supremacist, white nationalist leaning in Republicans is not new. It is not new. It has been there since before Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, and Lee Atwater. Black Americans are not stupid. It's all the above. Colonizers take advantage of another country's traitors and local corruption to capitalize on predominantly one-sided deals that benefit them and their foreign nations. You should also include far-right Western evangelicism, which also supports Israel. The far-right in Europe and the Americas loves to trick Africans for support while hiding behind a cross.